There was a really interesting moment in a Senate committee between Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff from Georgia and Postmaster General Louis DeJoy. And I'll give you some of the context of who Louis DeJoy is if you've forgotten why he was an antagonist for a while, and then actually some progress that has been made within the Postal Service and why it's so important to grill any Postmaster General, but especially one, in this case, who was appointed by Trump back during the first Trump administration, who Biden has not been happy to have as his Postmaster General, but it's a process to remove a Postmaster General. And this moment, while a little bit entertaining and really important points are made, will serve as a jumping off point for a reminder of how important the Postal Service is, but then how it serves as a representation of what Republicans will do so wrong in government. So we'll talk about that more. But first, here's this moment between Jon Ossoff, senator from Georgia, and Louis DeJoy, who got this job because he was a Trump mega donor. And then we'll talk about the arc of DeJoy.
We've been through this. Well, we're going through it again.
Okay, let's go.
On-time delivery of first-class mail in Metro Atlanta and North Georgia, late spring, was 36%, correct?
That is correct.
You said at the hearing in April that we would be, quote, where we need to be in about 60 days, correct?
I believe so. Yep.
It's been 233 days. Sound right?
I don't
It's been 233 days. On-time delivery of first-class mail in Metro Atlanta, North Georgia is now at 75%, correct? Are we where we need to be?
Where we're going to be for a little bit, yes.
Are we where we need to be?
Where we're going to be.
It's a simple question. Do you believe that 75%
Think for right now,
on-time delivery of
transitions
mail
that
in
we're
North Georgia is where we need to be?
50% of first-class mail in Georgia gets delivered a day in advance. We're in the 75 to low 80s on time, and 90% is the day after. While we're doing our transitions, okay, that's where we're going to be. That's one of the reasons why we have other types of service-related issues that are...
Yeah, my time is limited. Let me assure you that for my constituents in Georgia, the mail being delivered on time, 75% of the time, is not where we need to be. When you said 233 days ago that we would be where we need to be in 60 days.
Yeah.
Would you say that your tenure has been a success?
I would say that the 10-year plan has not reached what the plan said it would be, but I do believe...
Sorry, not your 10-year plan, your tenure. Has your tenure as Postmaster General been a success?
Senator, I know how you feel about me. You've been quite public, okay? So I'm not going to, debate that you think I'm a failure. Fine, I don't.
It's not about how I feel about you, Postmaster General. It's about whether or not seniors in Georgia are receiving prescriptions. It's the stacks of boxes of mail from courts that never arrived to their destination. It's the small businesses who are not able to get products to market and who are, this is my time, Postmaster General. You're here under oath before the U.S. Senate.
I know where I am.
It's small businesses who can't operate. It's death notices not delivered to family members. And you're sitting here trying to explain that 75% on-time delivery is a success. And it's not. It's not about how I feel about you, Postmaster General. It's how my constituents are being served by the United States Postal Service. You just lowered your targets for next year, correct?
I lowered the targets for next year to put that, what I just said, out into the public, that this is what it's going to look like.
You lowered your targets for next year so you could meet your targets.
So I can make the changes that we need to make to provide a viable United States Postal Service.
Well, Postmaster General, you're not meeting your financial targets. You're hemorrhaging cash when you said you'd be making money. Delivery in Georgia has been abysmal this year. You have not recovered, as you said you would. you need to do better for my constituents in Georgia.
So I think that whole back and forth also demonstrates Jon Ossoff as a figure and sort of his rhetorical efficacy. And I definitely think he'll have quite the future in the Democratic Party, but quite the grilling there, as you heard. I think in any situation, when the buck stops with the Postmaster General for the Postal Service, he should be the one being grilled. And the fact that he was selected by Trump for reasons that I don't align with, at the beginning of his tenure, not 10 years, he was doing things very questionable during that election period of time where Trump was sort of questioning mail-in ballots, and there seemed to be an alignment in some of the behavior of Louis DeJoy as the Postmaster General. So that put a bad taste in all of our mouths about Louis DeJoy. And the fear was that he would work to dismantle the Postal Service in an effort to justify the privatization fantasies that Republicans have about the Postal Service, which happens with so many different institutions, which we'll get to. But to be fair to Louis DeJoy, while I don't think he is the right guy to be Postmaster General, I'm looking forward to someone else being there. He has shifted since Biden came into office in a more rational direction. Time magazine did this interesting piece titled Louis DeJoy's Surprising Second Act and talked about how there was this big and important bill to invest more resources and to fix some of the problems with the Postal Service. And he was on board with it and was critical in getting it through, and then has worked in different ways in alignment with the Biden administration to make some positive things happen. So in all fairness to Louis DeJoy, that's the case. But also he represents an ideology with why he was selected, even if he improves some over the course of time, that's outlined in this Economic Policy Institute piece, the war against the Postal Service. Postal services should be expanded for the public good, not diminished by special interests. And this extensively walks through how for so long special interests aligned with conservative think tanks and conservative politicians have sought to dismantle the USPS so that it could be fully privatized. And that, I guess, to some people sounds nice, unless you think about a little bit how if we have an institution that does such critical things like gets crucial medicine to people in really rural communities that if we didn't have the public postal service, the private versions of them like UPS would be crazy expensive to get out to those locations, making it difficult for people to get some very necessary things that go through the mail. And this has been a long effort by Republicans. That was our biggest fear with Louis DeJoy. He hasn't been as bad as I expected, though. But this little back and forth reminds me to remind all of you that often the playbook for some of these, the government can't do anything correct for people figures, is restrict the proper resources from getting to an institution. Dismantle a system or an institution, then point to the fact that because you were a part of making the problems as bad as they are, the problem should be justification for your prescription, which is to privatize. Some within the Republican Party love the idea of privatizing something like Medicare and Social Security, even if when it comes down to it, they don't like admitting that. But these conservative think tanks love just everything. School, please. Abolish the Department of Education, something that Vivek Ramaswamy of DOJ has been floating and Trump has been on board with as a step towards privatizing education as well. Privatize. Exacerbate the haves and the have-nots. While the reason that people believe they want that in some cases is good faith, and they think, like with education, then people would have the ability to, with something like a voucher program, bring their tax dollars to a better school, a better future. And we walked through with that particular example how it doesn't work that way. But so often the outcome, knowingly or unknowingly, of these conservative principles, of these MAGA principles that blend with conservative principles, because it's all sort of different now, the GOP is, how it just ends up exacerbating income inequality, exacerbating income-based opportunities, making that gap even wider. And the attack on the Postal Service is another example of that. It would do certain business leaders well, namely private mail businesses, to gut the Postal Service. But it doesn't do low-income folks who need a more affordable option of mail getting to them with crucial things, again, like medication and so many other things, for that to be the solution. So it's not a logical argument on education, on any Social Security alternative idea that people have, on the Postal Service, to say we are going to work to gut, defund, and make less effective certain law enforcement organizations they want to do this with, like the FBI. You can't then let them say, because we have prevented the proper resources from getting to an institution, now we're going to point to how it doesn't work as effectively as it should as reason to get rid of it altogether. Which, with their floating of getting rid of the Department of Education, is a big concern of mine. Them attacking education, then blaming a lack of proper education because of their attacks on it as the reasons we need to go further in the private direction. So we have to call that out. And then, remember, the Fox Business clip that I referenced reminds us of when they talk about these huge cuts. We got to do huge cuts to the spending of the government. It's so often the necessary things in people's lives.
Nothing is sacrosanct. Nothing. They're going to put everything on the table.
That's what they told lawmakers. Everything is on the table, and that includes Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Right. So the Department of Government Efficiency may end up being the front line in going after such crucial programs. Now, I know what you're thinking. The debt, though, that is a real issue. Totally agree with you. It's part of the reason why, while both parties are really, really, really flawed, the Democratic Party sees better politicians and better opportunities for implementing policy change, because the Democratic Party does actually have, despite Republican messaging, a better record on quote unquote fiscal responsibility. Trump being the president that added more to the debt than any president before. But then they say put him in to deal with the debt problems. And then if that's their focus, you would think, well, first, they're probably not going to shovel more money in the direction of wealthy folks through huge tax cuts that disproportionately benefit them, right? Because we got to be more fiscally responsible. So we can't bring in less tax revenue as we're trying to balance the budget. Oh, no, that's something they're very excited to do.
Mr. Trump promised tax cuts, particularly for the middle class, for wage earners, for small businesses. I think Trump Tax Cuts 2.0 must be in the first reconciliation bill. In fact, I don't believe you'll ever get two reconciliation bills. I don't understand it. That was his promise. We need a blue-collar boom. We need to reward the working-class coalition. Come on, Jim Jordan.
Well, Larry, I don't care if it's 1, 2, 3, or 15. I think we could probably do 3 is the most we'd be allowed to do. I don't care what the number is. All I care about is doing what we told the voters we were going to do. I say all the time, we make this job way too complicated. What'd you tell the electorate you were going to do when you put your name on the ballot? If they vote for you, if they elect...
Yeah, it's actually more complicated than that, because you say stuff that you're going to do that makes absolutely no sense. So how you accomplish that, I don't know. But one thing that you have said you're going to do, you word it misleadingly, as Larry Kudlow did there, but is big tax cuts like the first ones. So we can only assume that the outcome of the first ones, which was an exacerbation of income inequality and pushing so much wealth disproportionately to the top of the economic ladder to people who don't need more tax cuts, that's going to be the Trump Tax Cuts 2.0 as well. And the reason is, show him on screen again, Larry Kudlow, who normally looks like he's 2 seconds away from falling asleep, was so pumped up there, is because he's obsessed, I think by his own identification, with trickle-down economics. He'll call it supply-side economics, but it's trickle-down economics. And he loves the idea of, if you just shove, girl, while you're cutting programs that benefit working class folks. Oh, so the way we're going to offset the fact that, this doesn't make any sense, but the fact that we're going to cut a lot of revenue will solve that by cutting spending. That equation makes sense to working class folks, but the benefits of the tax cuts, which will minimize revenue, will mostly go to wealthy folks, because if we do that, then someday you will be so honored to just have their wealth rain all over you. It hasn't worked that way before, but we promise it will. You'll be so lucky to be drizzled on by the wealth of the top 1%. Isn't that great? As opposed to just putting money where it is needed, people who desperately need the support. And then it actually does, even though this doesn't make any sense with nature, it does trickle up. It's not like you can't get really, really wealthy when support is going to working class folks. So, Department of Government Efficiency says, man, we got to get debt under control. I agree. Their solution to it, though, is making it harder to get debt under control by decreasing how much tax revenue, in large part through those who are already very wealthy, is being brought in by the government. Call it a working class tax cut because of some little minor tax cuts you do for working class folks. And then that now we have to offset that because now we have trillion extra being added to the deficit. So then you go and you say, we're going to go after Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We shouldn't have voted for it. I didn't, but too many people did. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Support the show. Get the members only bonus show by clicking that join button below.